What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the LTQ Wrestling Podcast. I am BDJ. Going to be talking about Joe Hendry. Hopefully, you guys have been enjoying the content. Been trying to get a lot more short content, long form. We're going to be recording a podcast this weekend, so make sure to be on the lookout for that. We'll be talking about Joe Hendry. He officially signed with WWE last night. I was asleep, just woke up about 2, 3 a.m. Was like, oh, let me make a video about this. Joe Hendry. Now, it was inevitable that he was going to end up in WWE. All the signs were there. They had him face Randy Orton at WrestleMania, even though a lot of fans were not happy with him losing so quickly. You had a TNA World Champion on WrestleMania. So that, to me, is a positive sign no matter how you look at it. He was in the Royal Rumble. Now, has this hype died down a little bit? Yes. Do I feel like it's because TNA saw, like, okay, this guy's got one foot out the door? Even though they're working with WWE, he's still under contract with that official company. The TNA see it as like, okay, this guy has one foot out the door. Should we really put a lot of effort into pushing this guy anymore? I can see that argument from TNA's side, even though TNA needs any type of recognition they can get right now, especially after the criticism they have been getting the last 24 hours for Frankie Kazarian beating Mike Santana for the title. There are a lot of fans not happy with that. But Joe Hendry was a guy that WWE's always been high on. He's been appearing in NXT here and there. He's over with the audience. And we'll have to see how that transitions to WWE, because WWE is all about character work. So I think he'll be fine in that department. He's not the best in-ring performer, but in WWE, you really don't have to be. You can just be average in the ring, put on solid matches. As long as you can tell a story and get over on the mic, you're fine. And I think Joe Hendry can do that. The only concern I really have is him getting lost in the shuffle, because TNA, he's, a big fish among a little small pond. Basically, there's not a lot of big stars in TNA like there used to be. A lot of them have, went to other companies. They lost Josh Alexander, Mike Bailey. Mike Santana is probably eventually going to join WWE as well. There's a lot of names that have left the company. So, he's a big name among a lot of smaller names there. Now he's going to WWE, where they got a lot of main event talent in the men's roster. Is he going to be able to stand out like he did in TNA and WWE? Because, I believe in Joe Hendry was red hot when he first started. Is it going to continue to be hot for a long period of time in WWE? Are they going to have to change his character eventually? Is he going to try to do something different, try to keep the fans invested in him? Because we've seen that many times before, where a gimmick is so over for a few months or a year maybe, and then fans get tired of it. And, a lot of fans just kind of saw Joe Hendry on YouTube or TikTok and the catchy theme music and him doing all this, posing and I believe and all this stuff. Now they're going to see it every single week on WWE TV, whether that's an NXT starting out, which I think that's probably what they'll end up doing. Maybe they send him straight to the main roster, though. Who knows? I just feel like some fans might get a little tired of it. And I've already seen some comments saying, like, oh, what's so special about this guy? He's got a really good gimmick. And that's what you need in wrestling. You got to stand out, especially nowadays. Like, being a good wrestler isn't going to cut it, because there's just so many good wrestlers out there, to a point where it's just like, there's nobody that really stands out like that. So he does stand out when it comes to his gimmick. But WWE recently has signed a lot of talent. And, a lot of them are red hot when they first get in the company, and they got all this hype around them, and the fans are into them. And then they're there for a month, 2 months, and they just kind of disappear, or not really important, or the crowd don't care about them, whatever the case may be. So that's going to be a thing I'm curious about. How are they going to introduce Joe Hendry to a lot of the audience? Because, yes, a lot of the audience knows him. They're not familiar with his wrestling or with how he's going to be on TV, whatever the case. So that's going to be something that I'm fascinated with, because we've seen it with, Penta, where Penta was red hot when he first got there. He was stacking up wins, and he hasn't really done nothing since. His brother Phoenix hasn't done anything in this company. Had a lot of hype around him signing there. Rusev's been involved in more stuff, but the crowd just don't care about him. Blake Monroe is, champion. We'll have to see how she does on the main roster. Like, there's a lot of outside names joining WWE, but the difference is you could have success in one company, and you could come to WWE and it's complete opposite. It depends how Triple H creative views you. It depends how you fit the mold. Are you going to be a star in this company? And I think Joe Hendry can definitely do that more than some of the other wrestlers that have been brought to WWE, because Phoenix, like, he's kind of like Ricochet, fantastic wrestler, but can't really talk. That's only going to get you so far in WWE. Penta's got all the charisma in the world. but they have a lot of guys with masks and luchadors and everything else. Is he really going to be, that important here? He's done okay so far, but he hasn't really won anything important. Rusev's been involved in stuff, but the crowd just kind of don't really care. Aleister Black, they're kind of doing stuff with. So they're trying and they're not trying with certain wrestlers. And listen, WWE, especially on the blue brand right now, they need a lot of main event talent because it's pretty much just Cody, Drew, and Randy on SmackDown. I mean, they don't really have a lot of other main event guys. They really need to get some more main event talent. Joe Hendry, I believe, he's in his late 30s, so he fits right in with like the older main event pushed guys. But is he going to be like a LA Knight where, he has all these good promos and the fans are behind him, but Triple H just doesn't see him as a main event guy? We don't know what it's going to be like for Joe Hendry in WWE. That's going to be the big question mark, because I think a lot of fans think, okay, this guy was over as hell on the indies. He's over as hell on TNA. That means he's just going to come to WWE and be a star. And that's a possibility. If Triple H sees him that way, they really wanted him, they featured him, maybe they see him as a main event guy. But there's also a possibility where he's just going to fizzle out in WWE and they're just going to sign somebody because they had hype, kill their hype, and then it's just like, okay, well, what's next for this guy? Released in 2-3 years. So there's a 50-50 chance, in my opinion, that Joe Hendry has success in WWE. Now, I think starting him out in NXT would be the right move just to get him used to WWE style. He's wrestled a few matches there. He hasn't wrestled weekly. You do something with him there for a little bit. They don't really have a lot of main event guys in NXT right now either, especially with them calling up Oba and Trick potentially. So that would make a lot of sense. Maybe have him feud with Ricky Starks or Ricky Saints. I still am used to calling him Ricky Starks. Maybe you have him feud with Ricky Saints for a little bit. Maybe he's the one to dethrone Ricky Saints. You call him up. Joe Hendry has a year or two reign as NXT champion. You get, the NXT and WWE audience used to him more. And then you call him up. I think that would probably be the right move. Now, I can see the argument saying, well, he's already over. He's already been introduced to WWE audience on WrestleMania, whatever. They know who this guy is. Put him on the main roster. I could, definitely get that argument as well. It's going to be interesting to see what move WWE does with that. But to me, having him go to NXT for a year, hold a title for, maybe even 6 months, if he does that, and then get called up would be probably the best move because they've done that with a lot of talent. Even Jordan Grace, she was a big name at NXT, TNA, and then she went to NXT. Got those two mixed up. They've been feuding. She went from TNA to NXT. She was a big name in TNA, really the biggest woman's name they had at the time, and she went to NXT. So I could definitely see them doing that same approach with Joe Hendry, depending on what the plan is going forward for him. It's tough because, with WWE working with TNA, a lot of those wrestlers are probably just going to jump to WWE, and TNA is really going to be struggling to keep stars there when they're working with WWE because WWE is just going to offer them a ton of money. They're getting a lot more looks at them, and maybe WWE eventually just buys TNA and uses it as a developmental area. They've already signed Jordan Grace. They're probably going to sign Mike Santana. They wanted Josh Alexander before he went to AEW. They wanted Mike Bailey for a while before he went to AEW. Like, Leon Slater apparently has a lot of fans in the company. He'll probably end up there. Like, you kind of got to feel for TNA because they just, no matter how many people they get in that company, they push WWE or AEW is probably going to sign them away from them, which is unfortunate. But that's the nature of the beast, right? And I guess they rather work with WWE and get more exposure than, not be and just kind of be where they've been the last few years, just kind of just there. So there's pros and cons, obviously, to it. TNA makes some questionable decisions. There's a lot of fans thinking they waited too long to put the title on Joe Hendry, and he didn't really have that exciting of a reign. And then he disappeared, I'm guessing, because he was wanting to leave or was already thinking about leaving. There's a lot of question marks about, TNA's booking. That's probably why Joe Hendry was wanting out. He's a big enough name now where he can go to a bigger stage. WWE's obviously very high on him. At least it seems like now. We'll have to see if that continues for the next few months. But for Joe Hendry fans, there's reasons to be optimistic. And for Joe Hendry haters, there's reason to be optimistic because you never know what WWE is planning. The creative has not been very good the last year or two. It's just not been very exciting of a product, really. Just wrestling in general hasn't been very exciting. We'll be talking about that on the podcast, by the way, about what's really been going on with wrestling. Just it's not been very exciting. So hoping the best for Joe Hendry. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't. Hopefully he doesn't have like a typical WWE signing push where it's, he's red hot when he gets there and he just fizzles out. We'll see, though. Let me know what you guys think about Joe Hendry signing with WWE. Make sure to like and subscribe for more wrestling content. Peace.